Greetings everyone, Phil here from Nintendo Village, just enjoying a quick coffee outside of my museum. In this video, I'm going to be taking you on a tour of the completed fossil section of the museum, giving you a rundown of every fossil that's in the game along with their individual sell prices. Do consider subscribing to the channel as we have a bunch of Animal Crossing content. And so without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, I probably don't need to tell you, but just in case there's any newbies watching, you get fossils by digging up the little star-shaped holes you find around your island. There are 4 fossils available on your island each day, although you can use Nook Miles tickets to go to islands to get some more. If you've completed them and you're selling fossils, always get them assessed first, because if you sell them as they are, they only go for like 100 bells, whereas getting them assessed by Blathers gives you anywhere between 1,000 and 6,000 bells a piece. So with that out of the way, let's check out the completed exhibit. So in the first room, all of the fossils are standalone ones, so once you've found one, you've completed the piece. First up is the Trilobite, which sells for 1,300 bells, and then next to that is the Anomalocaris, which sells for 2,000 bells. Also on this left hand side, we have the Ammonite, which sells for 1,100 bells, and up here in the corner we have the Amber, which sells for 1,200 bells. Heading over to the right hand side, down the bottom here we have the Milocunmungia, which sells for 1,500 bells, and we have the Dunkleosteus, which sells for 3,500 bells, and then in front of that we have the Eusthenopteron, which sells for 2,000 bells. Apologies if I butcher any of these, by the way. Up here we have the Acanthos Taiga, which sells for 2,000 bells, and lastly the Sharktooth Pattern, which sells for 1,000 bells. Into the main room then, and heading to this left-hand exhibit first, we have the Ophthalmosaurus, and he consists of the Ophthalmo Skull, and that sells for 2,500 bells, and the Ophthalmotorso, which sells for 2,000 bells. Next to him we have the Plesiosaurus, and he consists of the Plesio Skull, which sells for 4,000 bells, the Plesio Body, which sells for 4,500 bells, and lastly the Plesio Tail, which also sells for 4,500 bells. Moving along, the last one on this little bit is the Archelon, and he consists of 2 pieces, the Archelon Skull, which sells for 4,000 bells, and lastly the Archelon Tail, which sells for 3,500 bells. Moving along then, and we have a couple of my favourites in here. First up is the Quetzalcoatlus, so named because he's not wearing a jacket, and he consists of the torso, which sells for 4,500 bells, and the left and right wings, which both sell for 5,000 bells apiece. Up above him we have the Pteranodon, and he too is a 3-piece, with the body selling for 4,000 bells, and the left and right wings selling for 4,500 bells each. Moving along, and over here we have some pretty cool ones. We've got the Stegosaurus, which sells for 5,000 bells for his skull, his torso sells for 4,500 bells, and lastly his tail sells for 4,000 bells. Down below him we have the Ankylosaurus, and his skull sells for 3,500 bells, his torso sells for 3,000 bells, and his tail sells for 2,500 bells. Both of those guys look really cool if you set them up outside, by the way. Next to them we have this pair consisting of the Iguanodon, and he's another 3-piece. His skull sells for 4,000 bells, his torso sells for 3,500 bells, and his tail sells for 3,000 bells. And then next to him he's got his buddy, the Parasaurolophus, and he also has a skull which sells for 3,500 bells, a torso which sells for 3,000 bells, and a tail which sells for 2,500 bells. We've got some really cool ones over here. We've got the Pachycephalosaurus, and this one's actually only a 2-piece. His skull sells for 4,000 bells, and his tail sells for 3,000 bells. Down below him though, we have this super cool Triceratops. His skull sells for 5,500 bells, and you can see why, because it's that epic. His torso sells for 5,000 bells, and his tail also sells for 4,500 bells. This is possibly one of my favourite exhibits in the entire museum, to be honest. I think he just looks so cool, and he looks awesome if you set him up outside as well. Next to him, we have the Spinosaurus. This is another one that looks really cool. And it's also another 3-piece one, with his skull selling for 4,000 bells, his torso selling for 3,000 bells, and his tail selling for 2,500 bells. Next to him, just behind my hat there, you can see some Dino Poo, otherwise known as Coprolite. That's a standalone one that sells for 1,100 bells. And next to that is the dinosaur track, which sells for 1,000 bells. Behind them though, we have the Daddy, the T-Rex. This is the most amount of bells you can earn from fossils. His skull sells for 6,000 bells. His torso also sells for 5,500 bells. And his tail sells for 5,000 bells. And, well, just look at him. He's awesome. So cool. So cool. Now, this next one down here is another one of my favourites. I'm slightly disappointed that there's no Velociraptor, but this is the next best thing. It's the Deinonychus. And he's a 2-piecer. He has a skull which sells for 3,000 bells and a tail which sells for 2,500 bells. Down below him, we have the first bird, apparently, in history, which is the Archaeopteryx. That's a standalone one. That sells for 1,300 bells. Heading just below them, we have these two down here. First up is the Dimetrodon, and he has 2 pieces to him. His skull, which sells for 5,500 bells, and his torso, which sells for 5,000 bells. His little dude next to him, well, his name is the Jeremiah, and he's a standalone one, being this small, and he sells for 1,500 bells. Next up is the showpiece of the room, the Diplodocus. This thing actually consists of 6 different pieces. There's the skull, which sells for 5,000 bells, the neck, which sells for 4,500, the chest and pelvis sell for 4,000 each, the tail sells for 4,500 bells, and the tail tip sells for 4,000 bells. And well, let's just look at it. It's awesome. Next to him, we have his brother, who's not quite as big, but still massive, the Brachiosaurus. 4 pieces for him. There's the skull, which sells for 6,000 bells, the brachio chest, which sells for 5,500 bells, the pelvis sells for 5,000 bells, and his tail also sells for 5,500 bells. If you're going to have either of these anywhere on your island, you're going to need a lot of room. That's everything in this second room. Let's head through to the third and final section of the exhibit. Another bunch of cool stuff in here. First up is the woolly mammoth, or just mammoth here. He's not got any wool on him. He's 2 pieces, his skull is 3,000 bells, and his torso sells for 2,500 bells. Next up is the saber-toothed tiger. He has a skull, which sells for 2,500 bells, and a tail, which sells for 2,000 bells. Moving along, we have this sort of dual rhino dude. He's called the Megacerops. He has 3 pieces, his skull, which sells for 4,500 bells, his torso, which sells for 2,500, and his tail sells for 3,000 bells. Next to him, behind Leonardo's head, we have the Megalosaurus. His left side sells for 4,000 bells, and his right side sells for 5,500 bells for some reason. Lastly, we have the skull of my ancestor, the Australopith. This is a standalone one. It sells for 1,100 bells. And that is everything. I just want to say I really like in this room how each of the exhibits lead up to the completed evolution of all the different animal types for the villagers up at the top there. I think that's really cool. So that about wraps it up. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing all the exhibits in their completed forms, and I hope you found it useful in some way. Do consider checking out all of our other Animal Crossing content on the channel, and consider subscribing to stay up to date with all of our latest videos. Thanks again for watching. We shall see you all next time.